Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second in Eliquo's Adobe Creative Cloud Design Apps series. Today we're going to look at Photoshop Creative Cloud. Mostly covering new features of Creative Cloud specifically. Some of the features like the content aware have been available since CS6 and even 5.5, but they've been incorporated into new tools as well. So today we're going to look at the Smart Sharpen, the camera shake reduction, and the intelligent upsampling. These are all sort of based on the same technology. I first saw this at Max 2012, so a little over 2 years ago. Saw this technology as it was sort of coming in, and I couldn't wait for it to actually be part of the application. Now it is, so I'm excited about that. We'll be looking at the content aware, which again it's not a new technology. It's been around for 2 versions now, but it's now been added to the patch tool, which gives us a lot of really interesting options for removing objects from their backgrounds. And just some productivity features, rounded rectangles, just some easier stuff to make your production work easier, not having to work in multiple applications, stuff that we're used to having in other applications that are now available in Photoshop, and conditional actions. So when you're doing scripting, if you have a whole batch of photos and you want to apply an action, but you want it to do something slightly different if the image is RGB compared to CMYK, or landscape compared to portrait. So just some productivity features as well. So in this series, the last session we did was just about Creative Cloud and the install and the licensing and how it all works. And also we looked at some new features of Acrobat 11. So this is our current session, Photoshop Creative Cloud new features. And of course, coming up in January, we're going to have an Illustrator session. And coming up in February, we're going to have an InDesign session. So all of these webinars are focusing on the Creative Cloud design apps. After this series, we're going to continue to do these free webinars. We'll probably focus on the web apps after that, and maybe we'll take some suggestions on things that you guys want to see. So who is Eliquo? We're an Adobe authorized training center. We have offices in Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto, Quebec City. We have French and English instruction. We teach on Mac and PC. And we do in-class as well as online learning. So just like we're doing the webinars here, you can actually take all of our courses online. If you want to go to one of our offices, or if you want us to come to you, if you have a training center or an office where you want to have us come in and do training. If you want to register for any of our public courses on our website, you can go to one of our offices, or you can do these courses online. So it's live interactive. If you have a headset with a headphones and a microphone. We'll have two-way communication. As long as you have a dual monitor system, you'll be looking on your one screen, you'll have your application. On the other screen, you'll see the instructor's application. There's a chat pod. We can do video conference. So it's just like you're in the classroom learning. This is me. I'm the director of training here. So I'm an Adobe certified expert as well as Adobe certified instructor. What that means is I have to pass my certified expert exam every year to show that I'm knowledgeable about the latest version of the product. But I also have to provide my teaching credentials every year. So in terms of being a certified instructor, you not only have to know the product, you also have to have a teaching certificate and or years of basically evaluation. So every year we use the Adobe evaluations for our courses, and so they can see that not only are we knowledgeable, but also we're doing good delivery in the classroom. So I see all the course development and delivery here at Eliquo. We're just going to jump straight in. This is a demo session when you guys want to see this stuff work. So we're just going to jump straight in, and we're going to start with the Smart Sharpen. So here I'm just going to open up an image in Photoshop. And so under the, if I just zoom in, well, I'll leave this at 50% so we can see the whole image. I'll zoom in later so you can see pixel for pixel. So if I go to the filter menu under Sharpen, the Smart Sharpen filter is not new, okay? But there is a new technology that we're using in the Smart Sharpen. So if I wanted to sharpen this image a little bit, we'll just use the preview window here for now. And I'm going to crank this up. I'm going to say, let's sharpen it by 500%. Okay, and we can look at the details, in the background as well as in the foreground. And if I put this radius to 2 pixel, we can see that actually the image looked okay when we first opened it up. But if you actually look when we sharpen it, you will see that there is some detail that's being lost in this image. Could be depth of field. There could be different reasons why the lighting conditions, why the image isn't as clear as it could be. But if you look especially in areas like where we have this earring and this necklace, obviously this sharpen is a little too much. Okay, like obviously we're seeing, the pores in the skin. There's some posterization going on here. Okay, but if you look at in the earring and the necklace, you'll see there was some detail that we were missing. Now previously, if I was using this Smart Sharpen, this is what this would look like with these settings. I have a Use Legacy option here, and this shows me what the old Smart Sharpen would look like. And clearly you can see, yeah, we've got the detail back in the necklace and the earrings, but obviously we can't use this image. So what we had to do in the past was we had to sharpen the image and then we had to mask out. And we would maybe have 4, 5, 6 different layers with different sharpening levels on each layer, and we would mask them out to get the details that we wanted in the right areas. So here, when I uncheck this Use Legacy, you can see a huge improvement in the way that it now does the Smart Sharpen. So basically what it's looking for is looking for the lost details, okay, without that sort of posterization. So especially when we look at the earring and the necklace there. Now the other thing that I can do here is I can say reduce noise, okay? So here I still have some posterization going on in the skin with the pores and so on. If I just set the reduce noise to say 30%, okay, and we'll see what that looks like. Now we've reduced that posterization. So you may still have to do some little blending tricks here and there, but for the most part, this is going to save me hours of work, working with 5, 6, 7 different layers with different levels of sharpening. So here I can use the majority of this image. I can use it as is just by applying that one filter. Okay, so again here, just look in that necklace and you see all of the detail that we were missing in the original. Okay, now I've zoomed into 200%, so we're going to see a little bit of pixelization going on. But at 100%, you can see this now looks perfectly clear, but I can still use 90% of this image is still perfectly usable. I may want to go in and mask out a little bit of the areas where I've got some posterization going on. But other than that, this is going to save me hours worth of work. So that's the new Smart Sharpen filter. And when you look at the original image again, all of a sudden you do realize, like, even though it looked good when we first opened it, it really could use a bit of work. It was a little bit blurry. So that's the Smart Sharpen. The camera shake reduction is based on the same technology, okay, but obviously by the name, it implies that if the camera was moving when the picture was taken. Now here's the thing about the camera shake reduction filter. When you apply it, Photoshop analyzes the image and it tries to figure out which way the camera was moving. And this was the demo that I saw at Max a few years ago. It wasn't quite ready to go into the product yet. So if I go to the filter menu under Sharpen, we now have this shake reduction. Okay, and when I go in here and look at the image, I'm just going to undock my preview window here. So this is going using the camera shake reduction filter, and if you just saw right there what it did, there's the original image, and there's after just the auto settings were set. So again, we may have a little bit of touch up to do after this, but if you look at the image, the overall image was completely unusable before. Now when I turn the preview on, I'm just going to zoom to 100% here so you can see the actual pixels. Okay, when I turn the preview on for this image, you'll see that we actually have a usable image at this point. We may have to do a little bit of blending. We may have to blur certain areas. Again, there's a little bit of posterization going on. So we have some options here. We have some smoothing options. We can reduce the source noise and so on. So here, where I have the artifact suppression, okay, this is when the artifact suppression is at 0, you might see some JPEG artifacts, okay, some little blocking going on. So again, you can increase this and it will smooth out the details in certain areas. So by doing a combination of the unsharp mask that's going on with the shake filter, okay, and I can just simply turn it off by clicking here, okay, And I'm just going to zoom in again. You're going to see it at more than 100%. So it's not exactly accurate, okay? But with the artifact suppression turned on, you see that I'm getting some noise, right? And this is due, of course, to the posterization of the shake filter. So it's sharpening the image, but I am getting some noise in here. And that's what the artifact suppression will do. What this does, it will smooth out some of those areas. So we still have that appearance of a continuous tone where you have gradients, soft shadows, and so on. So again, this is amazing. If I was trying to do this by myself, I probably would never be able to do this. Okay, a human is not going to be able to use the sharpen filter in such a way, even with the directional being able to do it. So this is a brand new filter, and if you have the perfect shot, but the camera moved just slightly, I get this question all the time: does it work on motion blurs if the subject is actually moving? And to some degree, it can help with that. But really what it does, it tries to analyze the camera movement. So this is if you just had a little bit of shake to your tripod, or if you're manually holding your camera and there was some blur. This is an extreme example, right? But you can see that just going from a completely unusable image to being able to actually work with this image. Huge advance in our resampling technology. So that's the camera shake reduction, blazing right along. The same technology has been applied to upsampling. So in the past, here's what we've told clients, right? What you have is all you get. If you took a low resolution photo, there's not much we can do to increase the resolution of this photo. So again, here we have an image, and if I go and look at the image size, we'll see it's at 150 dpi at 12 by 8, which means it's good for desktop printing up to 12 by 8. For professional printing, we could only get this at, say, 6 by 4, right? So if I was to put this up to 300 dpi, normally what we would tell the client is, this is all you get. We can't add resolution to this thing. Well, with the new intelligent upsampling, you can actually get some more detail out of this image. I'm going to go crazy here. I'm going to go 300% at 300 dpi, and I'm going to pop this up. What I'm going to do first, actually, is I'm going to duplicate the image. Okay, so we'll have 3 copies of this image. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll do different upsamplings on this thing. So I'm going to upsample to 300 dpi and 300%. So I'm severely increasing the file size of this thing. Okay, and in the past, okay, all we had for upsampling was bicubic smoother for photographic enlargements, right? So I'm going to go ahead and apply this one, and I'm just going to go. A good example of this is on the butterfly here. So I'm just going to go zoom in on the butterfly, and we'll see when we try to add resolution, of course. See if we can get this into 100%. Of course, we lose detail, okay, in the sharp areas of the image. So where we have sharp edges, they become blurry. In certain areas of the image, the upsampling may be okay. So where you have a continuous tone, where Photoshop's done a good job of extending a gradient or a shadow area. But what really happens when we upsample, the huge loss is in our sharp detail areas. So all of your fine edges get blurry because, of course, it takes 1 or 2 pixels of anti-aliasing and spreads it out over 10, 12, 20 pixels, and we start to see this blurring. So I'm going to do the exact same thing, but this time I'm going to use the new intelligent upsampling. So here, instead of bicubic, I'm going to select the preserve details for enlargement. This preserve details is now going to go in, it's going to find the sharp edges, and it's not going to interpolate those edges. So where we have 1 or 2 pixels of anti-aliasing, it's going to leave it as 1 or 2 pixels. Whereas in the past, I would have to make that selection and protect it or mask it out. There would be a lot of retouching afterwards, and sometimes you just simply couldn't do it. What this is doing now is it's going through and it's finding the sharp areas, and it's not going to extend them. It's not going to resample those areas. It's going to keep the sharp detail. Then when we have continuous tone, that's where it's going to add the resolution in those areas. You can see that the filter takes longer. Of course, it takes longer because it's analyzing the image. Okay, but now when I do the same thing, when I zoom in on that butterfly, what you're going to see now is where we have the logo. Let me go to 100%. Where we have the logo on the edge of the butterfly, you can clearly see, right? I'll flip back and forth and I'll show you a 3-up view of all 3 images in a second. Because I'm working with these high resolution images, it's taking my computer a second to switch from one to the other. This is the one I did with the old style, right? Bicubic enlargements. And you can see the edges are completely blurry. When we go and look at the one that we just did, you can see the edges are now nice and sharp. Now, the problem is we still have some posterization happening in the areas where we have this continuous tone. We have some sort of blocky JPEG style artifact stuff happening. So I'm just going to do this one more time with that same option, okay? But I have a reduced noise. So just like we have the reduced noise in the motion blur, here with the reduced noise, I'm just going to put this at about 5%, and all it's going to do is find those areas where I have that JPEG blocking or those artifact style, and it's going to smooth out those areas. So it's going to retain the sharp edges, increase the resolution by taking continuous tone areas, and then actually reduce the noise in those areas. So again, this filter is going to take a while, but the results are clearly worth it. So again, it's not magic. You can't take a really low resolution and blow it up to the size of a billboard. But when you have those clients come in where you just need the image to be a few inches larger, or you need to say crop it but still put it out at say an 8x10, you're now actually going to have that option. Of course, it depends on the image, the amount of detail, the sharp detail compared to the continuous tone detail. So every image is going to be different, but it's really worth it. This technology, you're going to be able to actually use some of those lower resolution images and increase the size of them, either for printing or, like I said, if you need to crop or stretch. So I'm just going to give us a 3-up view so we can see how this whole thing worked out. It's just going to take a second to render the screen here. I'll set them all to 100%. So now we can see that in the original one, of course, we had some blurry edges. Okay. In the resampled version, sorry, this is our original here. Everything got moved around. So in the original, we have these blurry edges. In the one that we use, the intelligent resampling, we now have retained the sharp edges, but of course we had some posterization going on in our continuous tone areas. By just simply increasing the reduced noise a little bit, I was able to smooth out those areas, retain the sharp edges, and upsample the image. And so this is actually going to give you some usable images that you can work with. So again, this is all sort of the same technology, just been applied in 3 different areas that we've been looking at. And it's just going to make your photographic work a lot easier. So next thing we're going to look at is the content aware. Okay, and if you're new to 5.5 or 6, you may have not even seen this technology before. So I'm just going to show you quickly a couple of examples of the content aware tool. So here, if I wanted to remove the guy in the foreground from this image, that's going to be a nightmare of a cloning job, right? I would use the clone stamp tool or even the patch or healing brush tool, and I would try to replace him with some of the background. But of course, I'm going to get the matrix effect where we're cloning. When we're cloning, we're seeing those repeated clone areas. We're getting that step and repeat. You know, trying to take this debris on the ground and have it sort of continue on, but also have the smoke come over. If you've ever had to do a job like this, you know it's a nightmare to work with. The content aware tool, what it does is it samples from around your selection and basically tries to repeat patterns that are already there. So with this image, if I go to the edit menu and select fill, I can select the content aware. Go ahead and click OK. Everybody say ooh ah, ooh ah. If you hadn't known that that guy was there, you could show anybody this photograph and they would never think a person was in there. I have a little bit of step and repeat going on, right, with the boards. I can touch this up. I can continue to use the content aware, or I can go back to my traditional tools like the clone stamp, patch, and healing brush tools. And I just have a little bit of work to do. Okay, so compared to what the work that I would have had to do before, this tool is, again, it's just going to save you hours worth of work. So if I want to get rid of this guy in the picture, I just do the same thing, edit, fill, content aware. And again, if you didn't know that he was there in the first place, you'd never know. You'd never know that there's a person there in this image. If you were watching, you'll notice that there is a little bit of blurriness going on here. So again, I can use now the patch tool, the clone stamp tool, to just extend some of these shadows and details into that area, but still just saving me a huge amount of time. Here we've got the truck, okay, in this image, and I want to get rid of the truck, and I have a lot of different things going on, right? I've got the ground around the truck, but then I also have the mountains in the background and the sky and the clouds. I'm just going to start out by using the content aware fill. Okay, and it gives me a great starting point. You can clearly see that I'm going to have to do a little bit more work on this one. But if you look at the ground here where I was going to get rid of that truck, if I had done that with the clone stamp tool, again, it's going to take me 20 minutes to get it really looking really nice. Literally in a few seconds, I'm about halfway there. I need to continue, the mountains over here. Okay, and the horizon is a little bit messed up, but it just gives you a really good, quick, and easy starting point. So the content aware has been available now for 2 versions. Okay, but what we've done is the content aware has now been added to the patch tool. So we've taken that same technology and we now have it available with the patch tool. So if I wanted to get this backpack out of this picture, right, I'm just going to make a loose selection around it. And using the original content aware, if I go to edit fill and I select content aware and click OK, right? It's okay, but you notice that, of course, the branches are not going to extend, right? So if you look at where that backpack was, we do have a lot of inconsistencies in the image. So you have some grass showing up where it shouldn't really show up. The branches don't really continue. Now, if this was, a low resolution image or an image going on the web, or it wasn't, sort of the main focus, you might be able to get away with that. But what I want to show you here is if I was to use the patch tool, okay, with the patch tool set on normal, I'm going to have those same problems that I had when I tried to use content aware. I'm going to say sample the branches from over here, okay, and again, it kind of does an okay job, but the color doesn't quite match up. And again, some of the branches are not quite working. So if I combine those 2 technologies, okay, the patch tool, I can now say patch using content aware. So now I get the best of both worlds. Not only do I get the content aware technology, but instead of it just sampling random pixels from around the outside of my selected area, I can specifically tell it I want to use pixels from here, so I can kind of get these branches to line up, okay? Use the pixels from here and combine it with the content aware, and now what I end up with is an image that's virtually seamless, okay? There are some options here where you can make the color be stronger or loose. If it's taking too much color from the source, you can decrease the amount of color. If you increase the amount of color, it's going to use the color blending closer to the destination area. But you can clearly see, if you didn't know that backpack had been there in the first, look at right here with this branch, it just completely extends out. It's a perfectly natural picture. Especially if we're going to now put something else in the foreground, that backpack is like it was never there. So adding the content aware to the patch tool now gives you the best of both worlds of being able to use content aware and also target it where you want it to go. A couple of quick productivity features. That's the sort of the more sexy stuff that we have going on. Just some simple stuff. Rounded rectangles we now have. in Photoshop. So again, if you have to use, if you're using vector objects and things like that, with our rectangle tool, sorry, click and hold to grab my rectangle tool. When I go and create a rectangle, not an ellipse, in the properties, okay, I now have my live shapes. So here where I have the roundedness, right, of my rectangle, if I increase it or decrease it here, I can now see it on the shape. So again, it saves you redrawing it or doing these shapes in Illustrator, just some quick productivity things that are going to allow you to just work more efficiently, more quickly when you're working in Photoshop. I do have one final example, and that's conditional actions. Um, but what we'll do is we'll just open it up to Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat box. Okay, if you have any questions about any stuff that you saw. And in terms of actions, okay, what we can do with our actions panel, open it up here, is we can add conditions. So here I have a condition called if copyright watermark. Okay, and what the condition I've added here is saying if the document is portrait, add this type of watermark. So say in your portrait style you wanted the copyright to go vertically across the side, whereas on the landscape ones you wanted it to go on the bottom. You can simply stick in conditions at that point, and there's some built-in conditions. Okay, so here, right, in the conditional action, we say if the current document is landscape, then play the action landscape watermark. Otherwise, if it's not landscape, obviously it's portrait, right? So we'll say otherwise play the portrait copyright. And I just have two different actions that just simply put the copyright in different places. Um, Here, where it says if current, okay, these are all the built-in actions. Now you can actually write your own, okay, if you know JavaScript and you work with the API in Photoshop. But these are basically a whole set of things that conditions that you can have to run different actions at different points in time. So if it's square, if it's RGB or CMYK or grayscale or sRGB. So if you had a whole batch of images and you knew you had to convert some of them to CMYK but not all of them, you wouldn't want to batch the ones that are CMYK and try to change the mode again to CMYK. So you can say if it's RGB, then apply this color profile and convert to CMYK. You could also do the opposite, of course, right? You could take all your CMYK and convert them to RGB if they were going to be web images. If the layer is a background layer or if it's a pixel layer, adjustment layer. So we have all of these different options now. So rather than me having to manually go sort through my images, so I have a whole folder full of images, and they're mixed between portrait, landscape, CMYK, RGB. Some have selections, some don't. Some are layered, some are not. Instead of me having to manually sort through them all, divide them up into sections so that I can run actions on them, kind of defeats the purpose of actions, which they're supposed to be able to be applied quickly to a batch of images. So just by adding this simple little bit in here, we teach Photoshop JavaScript, but you have to learn JavaScript. Then you have to learn the methods and properties of Photoshop. And for most people, it's more than what they need to actually learn how to write JavaScripts for Photoshop. So a lot of people do take advantage of the actions. The only big drawback has been that you have to kind of sort through your images and put them into piles. And that's what this is now going to save you. So you can still have a whole bunch of images sitting in a folder somewhere, and then you can say, if it's this, then do that, otherwise do this, and so on and so on. You can nest these as well. So if I said I want all of my RGB landscapes to have a certain action applied, I would say if it's landscape, then play the action RGB, and in the action RGB, I can add another conditional statement if the color mode is actually RGB. So you can make these as complicated or as simple as you need to. Just to basically have Photoshop sort through your images for you, and you can still apply this action to a whole folder without you having to do all the work of sorting all that stuff out. So I know we went over this stuff fairly quickly. Hopefully what you've seen is some of the huge advantages to upgrading to Creative Cloud. Okay, some of the new features, especially with the resampling algorithms. So with the Smart Sharpen, okay, now for images that are a little bit blurry or out of focus, we now are reducing the amount of time that it takes for us to do composites of those things. The camera shake reduction, of course, for tripod movement or handheld shots. The intelligent upsampling to actually be able to take a lower resolution image and possibly be able to use it in a higher res setting. And of course, adding the content aware. If you're new to the content aware, it's brilliant. If you've already been using it in terms of the fill, now adding it to the patch tool to give us that extra bit of option of where we're pulling those pixels from. And then again, just a couple of quick productivity features, rounded rectangles, conditional actions. If you had seen our webinar on InDesign, or Acrobat. We also now have these a new font menu. Okay, so ways of organizing your font. So when I look at the font menu in Photoshop, I can now synchronize my fonts with Typekit if I'm using Creative Cloud, but I can also filter from here. So again, just some extra options so that as I'm typing, if I want to look at all the light versions of fonts, I can type in light, and instead of it matching just to the first word or the first few letters, it's actually doing a regular expression match. In other words, it's showing me every single font that has the word light in it. So I can see all of my light fonts or all of my italic fonts. You can add fonts to your favorites. You can mark them, okay, so that it show only your favorite fonts and so on. So again, just some productivity features. We'll be going over the font menu in more detail in the InDesign seminar that we have coming up. So a lot of those same features, that productivity stuff that we've added, they've been put into all the apps. Now using OpenGL on the Mac, so we've got faster screen redraw on the Mac. Easier exporting to multiple formats for graphics for the web. Um, Question: does Photoshop Creative Cloud have glyphs? So there's no glyphs panel, okay? Because again, it's not a desktop publishing app. It's not a word processing app. So there have been some font enhancements, but we don't have the actual access to the glyphs or font embedding or anything like that yet in Photoshop. So thank you guys very much. Next session coming up is going to be Illustrator Creative Cloud. Happy holidays. Hopefully we will see you guys in the new year. You can go to our website, eliquo.ca. You'll see a link for seminars and workshops where all the information is here if you want to register for these upcoming seminars. Make sure you check in. Also sign up for our newsletter while you're there. If you follow us on Twitter, we send out tips and tricks, industry news, course discounts through our Twitter account, and as well you can like us on Facebook. All the information is there on our website. Give it a visit, and hopefully we'll see you guys in the new year for Illustrator and InDesign. Thank you very much.